Hi, this is Chris Petri. Welcome everybody. Hey, I'm really excited to share this video with you. I'm just going through a quick little tutorial here on fresh squeezed tube paints versus maybe your dry cake paints like this that come in these sets like this. You can use both, but I always suggest trying to use fresh squeezed tube paint. And I go into a real extensive detail on my channel. So if you just type in Chris Petri, which is Chris Petri, if you type in those, Chris Petri, and then you type in Pallette, the word Pallette or Pallettes, P-A-L-E-T-T-E-S, you'll find that I have about 8 to 10 videos on my palettes, and I show you all different palettes that I use. These are just a couple I've used, but I use many more palettes over the years, and I still have them, and I still use them, and I kind of explain how I do. Sometimes use different palettes, plastic palettes, large palettes, smaller palettes, metal palettes, palettes with fresh squeezed tube paints, and of course if you're an extreme beginner, you know we use our oval prang palette. Beautiful, great, fantastic palette for beginners. If you're just starting out in watercolor and this is your first time here, welcome. I want to say thank you so much for coming by and welcome. And you've come to the right place at the right time because we're going to show you all the fundamentals in watercolor. But this is a beginner's palette, which is really great. And what's fantastic about this oval prang 16 palette, as all the extreme beginners know, that are working on that, I have exclusive videos for beginners. So if you're just starting out in watercolor and you haven't painted too much, go just type in Extreme Beginners Chris Petri. You type that into YouTube, and then you'll see all the videos that are Extreme Beginners videos, and that's more covers like the beginnings of watercolor when you're just starting out, and I get into incredible details on that. But suffice to say, this is the palette we use on Extreme Beginners, and this is semi-moist paint, which is absolutely fantastic because when you spray this with water, this gets really moist and soft, like soft fresh squeezed tube paints quickly. So that's why this is a great palette, and I always tell everybody about it because it really does work fantastic, especially if you're just starting out with watercolors. These palettes are a little more time consuming to take care of. You have to squeeze the paint all the time. You have to keep them you should keep them in the refrigerator. Again, if you type in Chris Petri palettes, you'll see all my videos how I keep fresh moist, juicy paints in my palette. I have that video, so you can check that video out, and I describe everything for you. So in any case, let's get started. We're going to cover how you can take advantage of using a fresh, moist, juicy paints for your paintings, and you'll see what kind of a difference you can have. So again, I poured some fresh, clean water here. I'll put this next to me in my water bucket here. And we'll maybe take just a simple office pencil, and I'll make a couple swatches. So let me just let me make these a little darker. So I'll get a darker pencil here so that we can kind of see. So I'm just going to make some swatches, some squares, like that. I'll make another one here, another one here, and then one more. So we're going to just make a couple squares, swatches, and we'll kind of work with these two, and you'll see the advantages as we go. And let me get my Raphael brush. So what I'm going to do next is start my first swatch on the left-hand side, and we'll use colors from each. So maybe let's make a division line. Like that. Let's do some division lines so we can kind of just get an idea. So this is more of a technique video. We're not going to do a painting on this video right here. We're just going to cover some techniques which are really important. This leads to better paintings for you. So if you're a watercolor artist and you're asking yourself, how can I do better paintings, or how can I make my paintings look better, this is one thing that's really going to improve the overall look of your painting. So first thing is, let's take a look and see if we were to go into some like this dry cake type paints. And let's go in with some blues. So I'm just kind of moving around with my brush on the paints, and I'm just going to mix some greens, And you can definitely use these paints and get some beautiful colors, but it doesn't give you the range, and we're going to cover this right now, how that works. So, okay, let's do a bluish green. So let's do a bluish green, and let's start off like that. And then let's take our brush, and as I always say, we try to rinse our brush and then maybe take a little water off the brush to dampen it, and then we can smooth this wash out and make it lighter like that. You could even rinse off your brush, dry off your brush really well on a piece of paper towel or tissue or sponge or your apron, and you can actually lift some paint off over here and get this lighter like that. So you can actually lighten up a section like that, which works really well. So that's our first bit of getting some colors on, some blue. I went into some blue. I'm going to use the same colors over here, blue, brown, green, and this was black actually. So I used blue, green, black, and brown. Now let's go into this palette with our fresh squeezed 2 paints, and you're going to see how what color we're going to come up with over here. So let's do the same colors. Black, that's happens to be Payne's Gray. Brown, which is burnt umber. Let's do some brown, some burnt umber, and then some blue, French ultramarine blue. And then we said some green. Let's use some sap green. Okay, now let's go down here and try to do it in reverse. We'll go darker here. And already you can see the beautiful, vibrant colors that good tube paints will give you. Fresh squeezed tube paints. Okay, so I use the same colors, blue, green, brown, and black, and then I use the same things here. Black, brown, green, and blue here. And you can kind of see how much more interesting that color is compared to something like this. These dried cake paints, and they're not really, let's say, quality brand. These are all Winsor Newton or Holbein paints. So the 2 paints I really use 95% of the time are either Holbein or Winsor & Newton. Mostly 75% or 60% Winsor & Newton paints and 40% Holbein paints, squeezed, 2 paints. For the 90% of the time when I'm doing like finished paintings, gallery paintings, commission paintings, things like that, anything where I'm doing my professional work at its best, I'm using Holbein and Winsor & Newton. And you've seen my palettes on my other videos. Again, if you type in Chris Petri palettes, you'll see all those colors. If you email me, I can send you actually the cut sheets or the my paint charts that I have with all the colors listed and how I put them in my palette in which order and all that. Many of you have gotten those already, so I'm happy to see that you're emailing me and getting the information you might need. And so let's try another color combination. Let's do more of a warmer. Let's go with red. That's a nice red. That's like a rose madder or like a alizarin crimson. And then let's do like an orange, cadmium orange type of look, or a pyrrole red maybe. It's kind of, we'll do that, and then maybe a little bit of yellow ochre looking color. And then a little bit of yellow, let's call that cadmium yellow. So we're putting 4 colors, warm colors, alizarin crimson or rose madder type of looking color, cadmium orange, cadmium yellow, and like that would be a yellow ochre. So we have that. We'll come over here and do the same thing. Let's put that in. It looks all right. It looks pretty good. Not too bad. There we go. Then we rinse off the brush. Dry off the brush a little bit, leave a little bit of water in the brush like a damp brush, and this way you can just smooth this wash down a little bit and make it more light. So we're going to kind of lighten up the wash as we go down the paper here to the center line where we have the division line, like that. Okay, and I hope you're having a fun time back at your studio, your house, wherever you're painting. I hope you're having a good time doing these practice tutorials, because they're a lot of fun. You learn lots of things when you do these, so I always encourage everybody, do these, do them a couple times, try them, make little paint charts for yourself, put them in a folder in your studio or wherever you have your art stuff. If you have a big, maybe a big plastic container, you keep all your art gear in there, and then whenever you're time to paint, you lift off the top of the bin, the plastic bin, and you grab all your art stuff and pull it out, put it on the table or wherever you work. Then when you're done, you put it all back in, and you have these papers in there too with your charts, your paint charts. Very helpful. So at this point too, I'm getting very muddy water, so let me empty this and get fresh, clean water. And again, I always say please change the water out often, because if you're going in with really dark, muddy water and you're trying to get like really nice looking reds and oranges and lighter tonal values and lighter washes, you need to have your start out again, get some fresh, clean water in there. All right, now let's go back into our fresh Squeeze 2 paints. Let's do the same colors. Let's go with alizarin crimson. And then we went with or cadmium orange. And then we went with this was yellow ochre and cadmium yellow. Okay, let's see how this looks. And we'll start down here and work our way upwards. Okay, looking good. Rinse off the brush then I do now. I'm rinsing off my brush. I'm tapping a little bit of water off on a paper towel, and then I'm going to dampen the paper and just work this color up a little bit. And then you'll have to make the judgment yourself and ask yourself which colors look better. These look a little more exciting, I think. The two paint colors. Let's go with a blue. Let's go with a really just a, at this point now, let me just take a quick moment, dip my, very important, let's keep our palettes cleaned up and have clean working areas to put out new paint and new washes. And that's another great helpful tip you can have when you're doing your watercolors, is just as you paint and you start to run out of area where you can mix your paints, then you just go in, take a quick break for 5-10 minutes, grab a paper towel, dampen it with some water out of your water bucket, get your palette cleaned up again, fresh new spaces. You don't have to worry, you're going to remember all the colors you used anyway. So you'll just know that you have to mix, as you're working, you'll just know, oh, I got to mix again my blues and greens and browns and blacks or whatever colors are the reds, oranges, yellows. Let's try blue again. And this is kind of like a French ultramarine blue over here. And then let me actually tape this down a little better because that keeps moving around. That's okay, so that's the blue. And then let's go with green again. Blue-green. Okay, so let's just do a blue-green and see how that looks. We'll do it again here. Start up this way. Go back in, maybe get some blue, more blue there. And then just damp brush, work it down. And I'm hoping you're practicing your brush technique skills. I just did a video on brush techniques. I hope you're practicing that one. Do that one often. Do that one until you really feel like, hey, I got this. You know what I'm saying? Practicing your brush strokes is really incredible. Remember how we did the Z strokes, the H strokes, the S strokes, vertical strokes, and the horizontal strokes? Try doing those. Work on your brushwork, please. This is really going to help make your life easier, so when you're painting, you're not feeling like you're being slowed down by trying to think too much about how you're going to do your painting and how you're going to keep your brush getting into those areas accurately that you have to paint in. when you're painting. So that I'm hoping you're doing those practice videos and videos like this too, mixing paints, making color swatches, color charts. Do these often too. Don't feel like I'm just going to give you the permission that don't feel like you have to create a finished painting every time you sit down and paint. When you sit down and paint, try a lot of these charts and things and do those too. Work them in. Maybe one week you do nothing but charts and stuff like this. Practicing color mixes and washes like this, and maybe color charts on what colors you're using, what colors are your favorite colors, what your palette looks like. Maybe you draw out your palette with all your spaces. You count up all your spaces on your palette. You draw a little chart and put your colors in that you're using at the time that you like. You can do that. And then you can practice techniques on doing our different brush techniques, on spinning the brush and getting circular patterns and doing all the different techniques and using your brush. That's really going to help you in the most critical time when you're doing a painting and you're trying to work fast and get through your watercolor painting, because we know watercolor dries fast, right? Watercolor dries fast. So that means you have to be really good with your brush and good with your brush techniques, so that when you're in there painting, you're not struggling to do certain things with your brush and you're not able to get into a certain area or paint something quickly. You always want to have a good mastery of your brush so you can move through your painting quickly and get that rhythm going, and you're not kind of questioning yourself or feeling uncomfortable about how to work your brush around. Try to get a real good handle on working with your brush a lot. It's really important. So we have this blue in here we just did, the green and blue. Let's do the same thing. Let's go with French ultramarine blue here and sap green, French ultramarine blue. Let's see how this looks over here. Let's start down at this bottom portion with those same colors, like that. So I'm doing some parallel strokes to the right. And then I rinse off my brush. And I grab another paper towel maybe, fold it up a little bit, dry off my brush a little, take off some of that water. Now I have a damp brush, not a brush that has too much water on it, but it's just a damp brush. And then I do this, and I work that wash upwards, like that. And there we have it. And we'll let this dry a little bit, but already I can see this looks like a little more interesting color. Again, fresh squeezed tube paints does look like it's kind of winning out on the look of more interesting color, more vibrant, exciting color. This one especially looks very, very just kind of too much grayed down and washed out looking. This one has some nice green color and blue in there and some brown. And this red, these reds look good too. These both look pretty good. So I would say this one is doing pretty good in our warmer colors, the red colors. That looks pretty nice. But over here again, this looks, I think, already starting to look a little bit better with the blue and green mix. Here, let's try one more. Let's go with maybe let's go with a more lighter red. Let's go with a alizarin crimson and rose madder with some purple, which is ultramarine violet I use. So we'll do that, and then we'll get the same colors over here. This one I think is maybe, that's nice. That's sort of like a cerulean blue. I don't know if I have a purple here. Yeah, I don't think there's a purple in this set. So what we can do is we can make purple in this set. We'll use French ultramarine blue, because this looks like pretty much a cobalt blue or a French ultramarine blue here. I call them by their names, the names I'm used to that I always use. Don't let that kind of fool you or throw you off. This is just like your normal standard, like cobalt blue or French ultramarine blue. And then we'll use a little bit of the red over here, and that'll give us like a purple. Okay, so we make a purple and a blue, and then we wanted a red, didn't we? So let's make this purple, and then just this red over here. Let's see how much. This too, you can kind of see how I'm constantly I have to scrub all the time to get color. That's wasting time, right? I'm sitting here That's taking valuable time away from when you're using fresh squeezed 2 paint. You're going right in, grabbing the color into the palette, mixed good, back into the painting, and you're working again, and you're getting your washes on, especially if they're drying. When your washes are drying on your painting, you got to keep moving, and with watercolor, you're always trying to kind of keep those washes blending together at the same time while they're wet, so that you don't get awkward looking marks on your paper and on your painting. But if you have to stop and constantly mix your colors for like a minute or two to get your colors out, like this, using this type of palette, that's when you lose valuable time and stuff dries on your painting, and then you're not able to keep a really beautiful looking wash going, and subsequent washes after that going. So, all right, so we did pre-mix now. So we mixed first in our palette, and now we're going to go in here. Let's do this one first. It's like a purple with some red. And we're just seeing how this works out here. So we're going to go on down like this. Smooth that out with a damp brush. And that's a little bit lighter. And if you need to lighten it up a little bit, once you put it on, you say, oh, it should have been lighter. You just dry off your brush. You take your brush, rinse it off, dry it off on a tissue or a paper towel. And you can actually go back in and just lift up like this to get it lighter. And even if you want, you can always go back into with a tissue or paper towel. And just tap on it a little bit and blot it up. Then you can dampen your brush, and then you can just take that again and maybe a little bit like that. Okay. And then a damp brush, really dry brush, I dry this off all the way and just smooth that out there. Okay. Try to just smooth that out a little better. There we go. All right, now let's use this. Ultramarine violet, purple. Looks fantastic. And then we dry off the brush, rinse it off in clean water, dry off the brush, and then what I'm doing is I'm just getting that last little bit of right where the line is. I'm just painting up to that line. Okay, and then we can use the tissue again. You can actually mold your tissue or your paper towel into like a point, like that. And then you can go in and maybe lift up a little bit if you think you want to lighten up that center area, like that. And there you go. All right, so we're looking at these 4 color swatches. We're looking at using moist, fresh squeezed tube paint right in there. And these are the dry caked paints where you kind of realize you're losing time, valuable time. Watercolor is a fast medium for the most part. You try to move pretty quickly through watercolor painting. Usually you don't want to be letting things dry and Okay, so we're back again, and we just had a little bit of a quick stop there. I guess my battery on my camera stopped working, and so now we're going to get back again, and we're going to keep working on this same idea of how are our washes looking. And we'll finish off with a few more swatches. How are our washes looking in our paint sections that we're creating here, our small swatches and sections of paper here. So we're going to do maybe we'll do another 4 here. Okay, 4 more, and let's continue with the same idea of what can we do with these palettes? Already we've learned a couple key ideas here. One, we're getting a little more vibrant, exciting color from our fresh squeezed tube paints. We learned that for sure. These are not looking so, they're some of the color swatches we did just a second ago. Some of them looked okay. Some of them looked a little bit dull looking. That's a couple things we learned so far. Now we're going to learn some more things. Oh, another thing we learned was this takes a lot of time. If you're trying to scrub around with your brush, trying to get like color out onto your palette like we were before, you saw how it took us a long time to do that. Scrubbing, putting some on the scrubbing. You're doing it. Whereas if you just grab this paint in, you get it down, it's good, and then you're into your painting and you're working again. You can see the advantage when you're working with this type of palette with the fresh paint, you're going through your painting a lot faster, and that means less chance your paints are going to start drying on your paper on you, and you'll have those unpleasant looking, those marks you get like when the one paint wash dries and then you let that dry and then you go to paint, up next to it, and it looks kind of funny looking. They call them blossoms and balloons and things like that, or cauliflowers and so forth. But backgrounds. And so let's continue on now with, let's even do some more exciting color. Let's do red, alizarin crimson, and again we'll divide these. Maybe we'll divide these the other way. Let's divide these vertically. So we'll divide these vertically now. And let's try this here. Let's do this. And we'll get some of that red on there. Beautiful alizarin crimson. And let's maybe just fade it down. Again, I grabbed some paper towel. Some paper towel just to dry off the brush a little bit. So I rinse off the brush, dry it off on a paper towel, and then I can just fade this down like so. So let's do a wash where we fade our color down to a very much lighter wash, like this. There we go. And then one more, let's get a little more darker, rich color up here. Straight pigment right out of the palette, right in here like that. Okay, now let's do the same thing. Let's get the reds from over here. This red, let's try this. This is the closest one we have. Already, it's taking us more time. Look, we're wasting time here doing this, scrubbing on the palette, doing this, and are we going to get the rich, beautiful color we want? Okay, that's about what we're getting. That's about it. Let's do this over here. Okay, now, damp brush. Maybe we'll just get a little more like that. Rinse off the brush. Now just a damp brush, so I just rinse off my brush in the water. The water's a little bit muddy there, you can see by looking at the way it looks on the paper towel, but it's still, we're working in that same wash, that same color, so we're okay. Okay, there we go. Okay, so there we go. There's the two reds. Alizarin crimson, so we could label this one. And this one is red. And we could just make an arrow that way just so we kind of know this is the palettes we're using. Alright, so we did red, let's do green. Let's go with a sap green. Straight, I didn't even do any mix. Well, let's mix it out a little bit here. Like this, and let's do our sap green. Straight sap green up there, like so. Maybe we do about a third of the rectangle here. with just straight paint, a little bit, just a tiny bit of water. Then we rinse off our brush. I'm going to get some fresh water. Fresh water is always going to help. Fresh, clean water. Now we tap on the paper towel and let's work this wash down. We're going from dark to light, like so. Again, I rinse off my brush, dry it off, and then we go our last little bit there with a very, very light green, like that. Hey, isn't this great? We're practicing two different things. We're practicing our paints and how our paints are looking on our paper compared from one palette of fresh squeezed tube paints to dry cake paint like this. And then we're also learning our painterly skills with our brush, and we're working on doing our swatches here. Taking darker color and starting up top like so, and then transitioning down to a lighter wash, a graded wash as they call it. Let's try green over here. So I'm going to take this green. We'll see how this will work for us. Okay, let's try it. Okay, again, I do about a third of the swatch with almost straight paint, no water, just a little bit of water. Then I rinse off my brush, dry off some of the water, and now I just have a damp brush, and that's all I need. And then I can just start working this wash down, picking up the paint and bringing it down. Then I, one more time, rinse off the brush, dry off almost all of the water to get that last little bit of wash on the bottom, which is super light. You can barely see the green paint. Okay, these are looking pretty good. I think you have more of a color range though over here. More of a the chroma of the color is a lot more exciting over here. This is starting to fade a little bit up here even already. So you're seeing already that you're having more exciting colors with the tube paints. Let's try another. We have red, green. Let's go with blue. Did we? Let's go with earth colors. Let's try earth colors. Let's go with a raw umber, burnt sienna. Something like that. That's a cool looking color. Again, I'll do the same thing. Rinse off the brush, tap off some of that water, and then slowly work this down. So I'm going to try to leave it darker up here. Rinse off the brush. I rinse off my brush, dry off a little bit on the paper towel, and then keep working down this way. And the graded wash is a good practicing technique to use, a method to try to practice smoothing out a wash. And then toward the bottom here, it's very light. Okay, let's come up into our cake paints. Let's see what we have here. Let's use a yellow ochre maybe. And then brown was over here, I think. See, again, it's taking us a long time to do this, to get these colors. Like if you're working on your painting and you're starting to look around and say, oh, what color do I want to use next? And then you have to go in and start doing this. This is all the time wasting as your paper is starting to dry, your paints are starting to dry, your washes. Okay, so I'm going to try to get that same feel. A little bit of red in there too, maybe orange and yellow. That would be better, I think. Okay, let's try that and see how that looks. Again, I rinse off my brush, dry it off on the paper towel a little bit, and I just work that color down a little bit this way. Okay. One more. Let's do one more. Green, red, brown. Maybe we'll do blue again. Maybe we'll do the cerulean blue over here. So this is sort of like a cerulean blue. Maybe it's kind of like actually a Prussian blue maybe. Let's try that. Looks good. What do you say? Is that a Prussian blue or what? That is. And then we rinse off the brush. I'm going to rinse my paper, empty my water container one more time. More fresh, clean water. Rinse off the brush, dry a little bit off on the paper towel, and then try to smooth this wash down a little bit. Okay, looking good. Now let's use our Prussian blue over here. Do you notice how quickly I grab my Prussian blue, 1, 2, 3, and I'm already back in the painting again? Where this one, it took me a long time to do all the trying to get all that scrub out, all that paint onto the palette. This was just basically one touch into the palette, down into the paint well, and then into the palette just to touch it down there. And then we'll fade it on down, graded wash. Okay, so we're starting to see the benefits of using the fresh, moist paint. And this can also be good too. This is good for practice maybe, if you just want to practice some brush work and you don't want to overuse your really expensive paints. I use this often. I use these type of palettes often to conserve on paint because I don't like to use up all my really good tube paint if I'm doing practicing with my brush techniques or just doing some ideas and things like that. So feel free to do that too if you want. But you can kind of see here what we're looking at. You can see that there's more exciting chroma in these fresh tube paints here. These are okay, but they're looking a little more dull, the color. Not as intense, not as exciting. And of course you're seeing how much work we have to do to sit there and scrub over and over and over again to try to get a little bit of paint out into the palette, where this here we just dip the brush in, and then we're in business right away, going into the painting and getting our washes in and moving on. So I'm hoping this is a good video for you to practice up on. Have a fun time with your paints. Try out different palettes, different paint sets. There's all kinds of paint sets out there you can try out. I'm not saying there's not good paints that are made in this form of the cake pans. There's actually very expensive cake style paints out there. But it's all about what you want your painting to, how you want your painting to actually look. That's all it is. If you want really more exciting colors like this, you'll achieve it quicker with the tube paints, as well as if you want paints with more vibrant, exciting color. I think you'll see that these do look a little more exciting. The colors, they're more vibrant. So I'm so happy you're here, that you joined along with us to try this exercise. I'm hoping you're going to have fun and try them out, and try out your paints at home. Whatever paint sets you have, go for the gusto, do it. Again, I always mention that I do use I'm an extreme beginner, so if you're an extreme beginner and you're just joining along on this video, we always work with this paint set, and we know the advantages of this. This is really a beautiful set. You just spritz a little bit of water in this set, and in 5 minutes you're painting with beautiful, rich colors and soft, moist colors. These cake ones are a little tougher. They stay dry. They really don't moisten up too well. So your best bet is definitely either the Oval Prank 16, which is Semi-moist watercolor paint, you spritz it with a little bit of water. 2 minutes later, it's soft and moist. You're getting really nice, rich colors like this, vibrant colors. If you're using like cake paints like this, let's say, you're going to get these kind of more duller looking colors. And they're a lot harder to work with. You really have a hard time trying to scrub around and get your paints that you need as you're painting your painting. So I'm glad we learned something new. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for coming by. We'll see you on the next video, and happy painting.